Casey, thank you for being here. Welcome to the Rising Beyond podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we're talking some family court related stuff today, and you have kind of a unique story from what I've heard with regard to how family court has gone for your family. So, can you share a little bit, whatever you're comfortable with about your story?
So it is a lot to unpack. So I will give you the brief gist. I am a survivor of domestic abuse. And when I got out, I thought that this is it. I'm going to be safe. The court system is going to protect me. They're going to protect my kids from, seeing abuse or being abused. And I realized very quickly that was not the case. I was told that bringing up domestic abuse or domestic violence in the court can work against you and that it can actually make your case worse and that you will be viewed as an issue. And a lot of times abusers will turn around and claim parental alienation if the children are afraid of the abuser. I mean, I think about how much, kids are exposed to abuse in the home sometimes. And when they get free of that, it must be so relieving that they're not dealing with constant screaming and yelling, intimidation, and things like that. And then they don't want to see that person that caused that for them. But then the safe parent is accused of alienating the children versus system realizing that the children are seeing and experiencing those things and for themselves have decided that they want peace and that they don't want to see the person that they have seen harm their mother or harm, them or their siblings. So It's a really hard reality to come to grips with when you are getting out because you think the system is going to protect you.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we know that is not often the case, right? There might be the one-off, the judges, the evaluation, they get it from the get-go and you're like, oh, right. Glorious. But that's just not what it typically looks like. Tell me a little bit about your experience with attorneys in your case.
So the attorneys in my case, it was very interesting because I started off with a male attorney and I very briefly had him. He recommended that I get a GAL. And I said, I don't want anybody that my ex wants. He gave this list of people. I said, I don't want anyone that he is going to recommend because I feel like these are people that he and his attorney are going to feel they can manipulate. And now you have to go back to that abuser aspect. A lot of the reasons why the courts don't get it is because why were we fooled into dating these thinking they were charming, thinking that they were, something they are not. And then when the mask falls, it's a different person. So I assume that anybody he wants, he thinks or knows that he could be able to manipulate or have side with him. And my attorney at the time, pretty much was like, you don't have a say. Like this person, that person's never going to side with her over me, this, that, and the other. And then immediately off the bat, I'm assigned a GAL who was very pro-father, told me he didn't care what happened to me, what my ex did to me, that it didn't mean he would do it to the kids. When statistics show 50 to 70% of the time, when the victim is no longer accessible to the abuser, they will then harm their children.
Yep.
And that is an actual statistic. I'm not making these numbers up. So it's very scary that the system doesn't know that. And they have this perception that just because he did it to you doesn't mean he'll do it to them. And instead of protecting them, the one thing I never understood is if it were a DCF case or if a stranger did these things to me and my kids, we'd be protected for life. But in the court system, we're not. So I realized that attorney, I was afraid at that time. I didn't feel I was healed in a place to stand up for myself. So I didn't agree to this person, but he told me I couldn't say no. So what am I going to do? And here's a male. I just got out of it, escaping a male controlling me, telling me I have no choice. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know the law at that point. So I get this GAL. He does these things where he's demanding a visit, doesn't speak to the children, causes more trauma. And then I'm like, this is not okay. I was very upset. I got rid of that attorney. I get another one who I thought would be very, like, I heard that she was very big fighter for, victims, that she was great, this, that, and the other. And it was the same type of thing. Don't talk about the abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Don't mention this. And it's like, what do you mean? And at that point, my ex had criminal arrests. So why would I not? It didn't make sense to me. But
Yeah.
everything, the judges will say, nope, criminal and family is separate. We don't want to deal with it. Nobody would speak up. Nobody would defend me. I found that my ex would write these his attorney would write these nasty emails and CC everybody, including the GAL and everything else. And it was very accusatory. And my attorney wouldn't even respond or correct the emails.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why? She's like, well, it's not worth it. We'll just discuss it in court. In hindsight, now I am pro se. I did end up being free from all attorneys because my attorney journey is very complex, because the one I just mentioned, she did not feel comfortable filing to remove the guardian ad litem after certain things had happened. And I was told by Child Protective Services to find an attorney to get rid of him. So I tried to. That attorney came on my case, and she was a godsend. And she told me that I should be pro se, that I will be able to do more as pro se and be able to say the things, because you have to understand the dynamics of the attorneys. They work on hundreds of cases. So if they're working with all these GALs, all these evaluators, and they go hard at them and they call them out on things or say, hey, that's not right, that's not what happened, that's not what you said, it's going to ruin their relationship. And then every client going forward, they're never going to have successful outcomes with them. Not to mention, the judge is going to view them in a different manner, that they're only attacking these colleagues. Like, what type of person's just attacking the colleagues? So I realized that, and she's the reason that she gave me that motivation and that push to go pro se. And she was like, you need to fire me. Like, you need to not have me on your case. And I'm forever grateful for her. And I did, and I took the risk, and it's the only reason my case has turned out the way that it has.
Yeah, it is sad, but in this arena, that is how things are right now, of the fact that it's not just some of them protect their own, right? Like, that is true. And some of them are really looking from that self-preservation perspective, and they're thinking about their other clients. And I have been in that situation as well. So I work in a specific county in Colorado, and I can't be an expert witness in that county really going hard at caseworkers, child protection, because I have clients here in my practice that I also need to protect. And so I have been put in that position where it was a really hard position to be put in, because I'm like, yeah, they're fucking this up. And I am loud and will advocate. And I had to be like, oh my gosh, what if my next case is here? What if my next case is seen here? And so it was so much consultation with other clinicians, but other people just in this arena to help me navigate can my role be so that I can do it all. And so it was finding the right person to take my place in that role. But it's a crazy place to be. Ooh, and it's so gross. Like, you would think if you're calling out unethical behavior, you would be well respected for just calling out unethical behavior, right? But no, that's not the arena we're in. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is not all attorneys are these malicious a-holes. Some of them are. Some of them are malicious a-holes.
Yes.
But not all of them are, and they are stuck in this weird dynamic. But the reason that I have you, and that you are this gold mine of information, is we have a lot of members in our audience that either choose to go pro se, or they're forced to go pro se because they have no financial means.
Yeah.
And so I want people to see you can go pro se and have success.
Yes,
and so can you share how your case just turned around, what you were able to do going pro se, so that people can see it's doable?
It is. Yeah. And yes, I would love to share that. So one of the biggest things in my state, specifically in Connecticut, is they will say you can't get rid of a GAL, right? Like they're hard to get off your case. Once they're on, that's it. So that's why I went through what I did with everything. And when you have a GAL and they're doing things that are unsavory, they're misrepresenting facts to the court. Mine did a lot of things that I documented. That's the first thing I want to tell anyone that's listening to this. You have to document. You cannot just think that you can call them out on the stand and say, but you said this. They will lie. They will 100% say, I don't recall that I said that, or things of that nature. You have to document. In Connecticut, it is a one-party consent record state. I highly recommend anybody look into that. See what your consent for a recording, audio recording is, because we are one party. So I started recording interactions that were happening with him. He had no idea. I just recorded them. I would put everything in an email. If we had a phone call, I am following it up with an email detailing every single thing that we discussed, everything that was said. So there was no misrepresentations, no miscommunications. And then I say, if I am missing anything or if anything you feel is inaccurate, please respond within 24 to 48 hours with what you feel is what occurred. So those are the things that I would do. And that is how I caught my guardian ad litem in many lies. He would try to go on the stand. They were trying to push my children to see their father, and they were afraid to go. And they, at that point, were refusing. And they have tried to claim parental alienation. They tried to do the custody flips. And I was able to, as pro se, sit there and ask him those questions. I filed a grievance against him. Our last day of trial, he got the grievance a few days before it, and he emailed and said that he no longer felt that he was, what was the word he tried to use? That he wasn't educated enough. It wasn't his area of expertise to be able to make any kind of proposed orders. He did not feel qualified. Sorry. I do not feel I am qualified to stand behind the proposed orders I previously made. I rescind them. And our judge's face was shocked, because here's this man who has for so long pushed mom is bad, dad's doing nothing wrong, it's her, she's poisoning the children. I heard it all. Okay. And so now I have all this documentation that everybody was afraid to put in. I have emails from therapists. He had tried to block and claim that he didn't waive privilege for my children's mental health providers to give me their records. I said, he can't do that. I have my parental rights are completely intact. I have custody. He has absolutely no say. He's a guardian ad litem. He can have access to them. I go, at this point, I'm going to also rescind his access because I'm the one who gets to say. And it was insane to me that this was happening. But I have emails back and forth because, again, I don't do things via the phone. I do everything I can via email. If you need to have a phone conversation, you follow it up. And so I went to court and I called him out. I said, didn't you say this? Didn't you do this? And he was furious. He had no idea I recorded him, no idea, rescinds everything. And then all of a sudden, all these things, my judge was, saying she had orders written since April of 21. And all of a sudden my orders come back that my ex has no custody access. All of a sudden, after I took over my case in the last, 4 court dates, and I had court dates and I've had so many, but the last 4 of my trial, I took over everything and called it all out. I sat there and asked, why am I not being afforded my right to due process? Why is it that my ex has put on his entire financials, but I'm not allowed to? It's all on the record. And your attorney is not going to do that. And the other thing I wanted to say too is because I do help women right now currently navigate the court system, and I work with their attorneys, and I will do a lot of research for them. I will do and send articles, scientific evidence-based studies, because everything should be scientific evidence-based. There is something called the Daubert standard, and it is literally what they go by for expert witnesses, for expert evidence. It has to meet certain standards, and it's under the federal rules of evidence, and you can look it up. And it is very important that people know that, because if you have somebody saying they are an expert just because they've done X amount of custody cases, doesn't mean they're an expert. What have they done? They have to have been involved in research in the last 2 years. They have to be published. They have to be actively involved in these things within the last 2 years to be considered an expert, and you can disqualify them, and you have a right to question what they're saying is that makes them an expert. And so many people don't realize that. And I had one of the biggest experts in Connecticut on my case, and I got him to be disqualified as an expert because he's not. He admitted he had no domestic abuse or violence training. He admitted he has no recent child abuse training. He said he just reads articles. I said, when is the last time that you've been taught by another person what to look for with child abuse? I said, mental health is an ever-changing field. So much,
Yeah.
there's so many things that are coming out, and you're going to say that you're an expert because you graduated 40 years ago and you've been on 2,400 cases in the state of Connecticut. So it's really important that you start to question these people and you have everything in writing. And those are the things that saved me, because if I didn't video record and I didn't document, I 100% would not have custody right now. I'm a firm believer. My case would not have gone the way that it did, but I'm not afraid to speak out. And I know that a lot of these attorneys, I started to say this, I apologize. A lot of attorneys also have high caseloads. So when you have someone, you are your own case manager. People forget that. The attorney works for you, but you also have to do work. You can't just sit back and expect them to do the research or find the case law. And that's why having somebody that is a strategist or a coach really does come in handy, because we do that work. I do that work. I have files and upon files of things for child sex abuse, for reunification, for parental alienation, how to fight each different item. And being able to give those to the attorneys is really helpful. And I wanted to say, I am so grateful for you, because I had no idea that this case law came out, and it was brand new case law from August of last year. No clue.
Yeah.
It would protect her client. Fully protect her client.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it is, from all of the women I've worked with and some men, it is exhausting doing family court in general, right? This whole process is exhausting, and it can feel like a full-time job. And so having a coach or a consultant, or even if you can't go pro se and there is an attorney who is great in your area, consulting with them, that can make or break the research and the documentation you can have for your case. So if at all possible, I do highly recommend it. How were you able to, so the beginning of this year, I was asked by my community, everyone on my email list, things to really focus on healing from the abuse. So how is it that you, like the timelines of your court case have nothing to do with the healing process, right? It can completely botch it sometimes. But what were you able to do as you were preparing, and as you were going pro se, you're going back through, the co-parenting messages and all of those things. How were you able to stay okay enough to really do the work of going pro se? Does that make sense?
100%. Because I'm not gonna lie, I was terrified. Full disclosure, I was petrified. I was like, there's no way I could do this. There's no way. I have to face him and his attorney.
Yeah.
But I had a really, really good therapist, and I have a good therapist now. And my first therapist, I credit her, and I had a parent counselor. They assigned me a parent counselor, and he was a massive support. And when I found out that it was a male, I was like, are you kidding me? You're going to get a guy? There's no way. I don't ever want to trust or talk to a man again. And he was very validating, and he's very knowledgeable, and he works with the child adolescent trauma services. So if you have a DCF substantiation for your case, you get referred to this program. And he and my therapist really gave me the confidence. And that's one of the things that also having a strategist helps with, or finding other survivors, who validate you and say you're not crazy. But I did certain things. I journaled. So if anybody's listening who is looking to get out, but they're afraid to get out, or they don't know what to do or where to start journaling what is happening, or think back of the things that happened. I always started with my documenting, where I would write what my ex would try to call novels. And I would recap what our argument was, because he would then immediately after try to flip the narrative.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So just like I recap with my emails, I would do that with messages, because I had a therapist tell me to start journaling. And I did. And I started to see, that's when I really started to see a pattern of, wait a minute, this is what happened. But now that's not right. Gaslighting is strong with my ex. And
Yep.
it was confusing, right? They try to manipulate the truth and make you think it didn't happen. So journaling is huge, big way of self-care, because I still to this day go back and read stuff. I still go back. I have audio recordings of him threatening me. I go back and I'm like, it's not me. I'm not crazy. This person did horrific things to me. But having a really good therapist is important. I think that if you have any community programs, community outreach programs or resource, there's a lot of different case management that a lot of people don't know about throughout every state. And I found them in every state where you search community supports. And there are places that will assign you a case manager. Like I have a case manager now still. I go to court next week and she's coming with me to support me. It doesn't end. It'll never end for me, but having that support is massive. I do a lot of grounding. I do still have panic attacks. I think, for me to pretend like I'm completely healed, I'm not. I get triggered. So I do a lot of grounding work. I remember, what can I smell? What can I taste? What can I hear? What can I feel? And I do those things. Even right now, I have a fidget with me, like I always, because it's traumatizing. You're reliving it over and over. But really doing that work really helps you to get through everything. And I think the biggest thing is reminding yourself that you can do this. And when I open up one of their obnoxious emails or emotion that is like out of this world, full of riddled of lies, I read it. I used to get panicked. I'd be like, oh my God, a contempt? What does this mean? Oh my goodness, they're going to do bad. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to be looked at bad.
Yes.
Now I read it and I force myself to laugh. That's the first thing I do. I don't care what it says. I force myself to laugh. And I do that because I'm like, this is so ridiculous. It's not true. It's ridiculous. And then what I do is I write it down. I write down the truth to every lie that they have put on paper. And when you do that, you can send it to your attorney or you can file an objection. People don't realize my former attorney would never file objections to the things they would write.
Yeah.
So I felt like when a judge is reading it and you have no response, it's almost like, well, it must be true. There's no way that it's not true if she didn't respond. So now every time I respond, I don't let any of that, fly by the wayside or just say, oh, I'll deal with it in court. No, I will respond with the truth. And I will state these are continued tactics of coercion and vexatious litigation, and it's a waste of judicial economy. And I will repeatedly say those things because it is. They're wasting judicial economy.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, the courts hate having to spend money. So make sure you highlight how much your ex is wasting their money.
Judicial economy. Yeah, I was thinking too, what you were just saying also goes back to the gaslighting piece. If you are journaling and you're writing things down so that you can start seeing the patterns of gaslighting within your relationship or right after you've left or whatever that means, you will get better. It's like practice of seeing patterns of gaslighting, because guess where you will also be gaslit? In our family court system. And so
all the time,
you're gaining that confidence and the ability to pick it out, pull it out so that you have more of a confidence in that you do know the truth. And then just as you were saying, we have right in the Rising BM community, we have people who are brand spanking new, who haven't left yet, those who have just left are in their very first like temporary orders, hearings. And then we have some of our OGs that are years out, and then magically 2 years out there, of any court hearings, they get a new motion, right? Because that's how it works. But that has been a really successful strategy of you get the motion. If you need to like push pause, right? Push pause, take a deep breath, do some grounding, take a step away for a short bit, come back, line item by line item. What is the truth? Write it. Next line. What is the truth? Next line. What is the truth? Because that will help you. And this could be in like a Google Doc, separate Google Doc, wherever you're doing it.
Yep.
First, it is
Copy
for
and paste.
you. Yes, first it's for you to be like, okay, where is my truth? Let me ground myself in what is true. Then you get to use that. You might need to reword it. You might need to find evidence for you, whatever it might be.
Yes. Yes.
For your attorney, for when you file the motion or the response to the motion or whatever it might be. So yes, that is a strategy we've seen really work well. What have you seen as like the other than the audio recordings? Because yes, those, and Colorado is a single consent state too. There are many states where it is dual party consent, and so you won't be able to do the audio recordings. But what's one or two other, I guess, some of the best evidence that you can bring into court?
Best evidence are going to be your emails, and use, if you can, through parenting stuff, don't use text messages as much as you're going to use app close. And you really want to know how to get evidence in. That's a big part of it, because when you don't know how to get the evidence in, it can make it difficult. You want to know what person you're going to be able to get it in through, how to authenticate it, and the manner to do so. I've been unable to get certain evidence in, but sometimes there's something called ID only. And when your ID only is, you can describe what's in that evidence. Even though you don't get to present it,
like put
you're
the
describing,
evidence.
This is what it would show.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like all these little nuances that when you're dealing with the day-to-day of the surviving piece, it can feel really overwhelming to know that. But once you know those things, you can do the thing, and that you're not alone. And there are people like Casey that are available to you if you need support. Casey, do you work with people in states outside of Connecticut?
I do, and I've helped on cases outside of Connecticut. I will research laws. I've helped in California, Utah, Ohio, Colorado, pretty much Massachusetts, everywhere, North Carolina.
Yeah. Because I think that's really important as the audience are listening, to make sure that the person is comfortable working in your state, like with your state laws, like Colorado has Cadence Law enacted, and a couple of other unique laws that were passed last year that other states don't have. And so making sure that you are going to be with, if you're going pro se, if you are needing general coaching or therapy on how to respond to your ex-partner, or you're needing, those basic, like how to testify in court type things, maybe not as important. But if you are going pro se, the coach or consultant that you are looking for needs to be willing to be doing that research in your state laws. I talk a lot about how do you find a good play therapist for your child, or how to find an attorney, and all of those things, all those questions to ask. This is one to ask if the point of grabbing a coach is so you can go pro se well. This is a question to ask your coach.
Absolutely. And I do also want to say too, another good route that I know is nationwide is there's a program. It's a Avenging Angels program. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's Susan Emilian. She is an amazing advocate for survivors. Her niece was murdered in college by her boyfriend. And so she was an attorney in Connecticut, and she has since gone full into advocacy work, and she does an amazing program. It's a Survivor to Thriver program. And I have to say, even with all of my therapies I was doing, her program really brought it all together. Because I know this sounds really silly, but she does a 2-day workshop. It's completely free. She has them in February and in March, and then she does them in October and November. And she forces you to think about your future. And I think a lot of times we get stuck in the now, and we always have to stop and remember, what can we control? What can we not control? And I tell my moms, I'm like, you have plan A, B, C, and D, right?
Yeah.
A, things go how you want, and you have to be prepared for all of them. B, they don't go how you want, but what can we do? C, we're reorganizing, we're going to file an appeal, things like that, if that's the case. But sometimes the court orders are not what we want, but we can work with them, right?
Yes.
And you don't need to appeal everything. And as somebody once told me, my friend who's an attorney said, if you're 80% happy with your orders, don't fight them.
Yeah.
If you're 80% happy, because it's not worth it. Because if you go and you file for an open judgment, or you go and you file an appeal, you're opening up doing it all again. You know what I mean? So it really is important to know those things. But when you start to do like a program like Susan's, where you're looking to the future, it makes you think about your journaling. Where do I see myself in 5 years? And some people can't get out of seeing the
Yeah.
now.
Yes.
So having those different tactics of having different game plans for, okay, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. So doing those things are extremely important, because it's very difficult. I was stuck in the, oh my gosh, oh my, what am I going to do? Like, I can't believe this is happening to me. I was there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm human. So doing Susan's program really helped me, because I wrote out, in 5 years, I want to be doing exactly what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And here I am. I manifested it, and now it's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And I think that's something, again, that we're really working on in the Rising Beyond community right now. If you're on my email list, you're getting some of these. If you listen to the podcast, you're getting some of these. We really are focusing on, how do you separate the you that was abused, the you that still has to deal with post-separation abuse? How do you separate that you from the you that is more, that is real and who you are going to be? Because until there's some separation, it is really difficult to even see that there's a future ahead of you. And so that's one of the pieces of the healing process that we're working on right now in the community at the time of this recording, and then, probably the next couple of months as well. So, Casey, as we wrap up, is there one other little nugget that you'd like to leave our audience with if they are going pro se, they're contemplating getting rid of their attorney? Just some little nugget that they can take with them.
Know your truth. You know the truth. Don't let them cause doubt in your head. Don't let them intimidate you, and go on the offensive. Don't sit back and wait and be defensive to what they do. Ask the questions. Why are you not, for evaluators, why are you not factoring my children's mental health with this? Why are you not concerned at what I am telling you is happening? Don't let them bully you. You are a strong person. You're an amazing parent. Remember that you're an amazing parent, and tell yourself that, and that you're doing right by your kids. And don't let them try to make you feel anything less, because they do. They try to erode your confidence, and they try to make you feel that you are the issue, and you're not, and you're doing everything you can. I always say, get your kids in therapy as soon as you can. And if your ex is refusing to do therapy, there's strategies. Talk to the school counselor, ask the social worker to meet with them. There are things that your ex does not need to agree to if you have joint custody, that you could still get supports in place for your children. If your children are having a mental health crisis, call 211 or whatever community outreach there is. Remember, you have resources, and don't feel that you're alone, and utilize them. And that's the biggest thing I think so many women forget, is that you really need to feel empowered and empower yourself. Start thinking that what they're saying is nonsense. And even if you go in saying nobody will believe them, even if they do, go in with the thought process, nobody is going to believe this, and this is why. And then that's going to help you put together your case the best. If you go in afraid, you're going to forget things. You need to go in feeling empowered. That's the biggest part that people lose, is the empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah. And even though that's less tangible, it is so important. So, Casey, if people would like to reach out to you and connect with you after they listen to this episode, what is the best way to do that?
So my website is still a little under construction, but I can be reached through email, prosestrategiesllc@gmail.com.
Yep. And you all know that all of the information. So by the time this launches, this episode goes live, if that website is up and running, it will be in the show notes so that you can connect there and learn more about Casey and her services. And then go ahead and send her an email. Her email will be in the show notes as well. Casey, thank you so much for sharing your experience and showing that there is not just this little sliver of hope if you have to go pro se, but there
A
is
lot.
hope for huge change, even if you have to go pro se.
I know it seems small, but you can really get there. I mean, I got rid of a GAL, a bad evaluator, and that's unheard of. So it's not easy, but you can do it.
Yeah. Yep.
Just
You can
document.
do it. You are not alone. And for all of you listening, I appreciate you. We do this for you, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Rising Beyond podcast.